All right, we're rolling. What's going on? Welcome to Talking Buffalo, part of the Blue Wire Network. I am your host, Patrick Moran. Thank you, as always, for locking in. Today is Wednesday. That means, as always, I'm joined by my good friend, Aaron Quinn from Cover One. By the way, when I say this is Wednesday, we're actually taping this on Tuesday morning. So Aaron's looking at me like, what? It's Wednesday? No, man, it's Wednesday when this drops. What's going on, buddy?
Yep.
How you doing?
Doing great, man. You got that hoodie on. You should open the windows in your house a little bit because
It's kind of cold in here.
it's a little chilly this morning, but we're getting nice. It's gonna get real nice
Yeah.
today. It's gonna get up into the 70s. So I'm shorts and shirts, man, shorts and t-shirt. I'm ready. I'm ready for this weather. So
It's getting to be that time of season. I
yeah.
love it, man. Things
Nice
start to come
weekend
alive.
outlook here for the 716. Real nice weekend. Up in the high 70s pretty much throughout the weekend. Sunny all weekend. Hopefully that stays.
Holiday weekend too, man. Music to my ears, man.
The
You
kickoff.
grill? Do you grill? Are you
Yeah.
gonna be on the grill? You gonna be on the grill at all this weekend?
Maybe a little bit. Probably. Yeah, I think so. I got a pork loin in the freezer. I'll probably do that up. Yeah.
Nice. All right. So today we're gonna be spending some time talking about OTAs for the Buffalo Bills.
Do we have to?
Are going on this week. Yeah, we have to.
No,
In fact, if you're watching us on the video side, and thank you again, everybody, whether you're watching on the video side, the audio side, I appreciate everybody tuning in here. Aaron always has a little sign behind him, and today's sign reads 10 reasons why OTAs are dumb. Click here. That's what I like. I like the click here thing. We all know it's clickbait season right now because there's just not a lot of interesting stories to write about. Anyway, we're going to spend some time. Aaron put out I don't know if your tweet was meant to be funny, but you got some good responses from it. Aaron basically was talking about, so what stories, overrated our storylines are going to come out of OTAs. So we got some responses, some talking points there that I want to make sure I hit on. Before I get into things, I had Stevie Johnson on the show last week, or actually over the weekend. We taped it over the weekend, just dropped it actually on Tuesday, the episode. That was a lot of fun, man. I'll tell you, I don't know if you've ever met Stevie in person before.
Haven't.
Dude, I'm telling you right now, man, I've been doing this show for, I don't know, 5.5 years or so, and I've been, blessed. I've had an opportunity to talk to a lot of media people and a lot of current and former athletes. Stevie's up there, man, with he's amongst the coolest, dude. So I did the shows on a Saturday afternoon at Imperial Peach, which is weird because I usually do shows there on Thursday nights. But anyway, he shows up and like literally instantly he walks in. And Stevie's one of the more popular Bills players, in recent years. And
definitely through the drought, right? It's like him and Freddie.
Absolutely, man. Yeah,
Fitzpatrick, yeah.
So he comes in and people are just started chanting Stevie within seconds of him being in there. But anyway, you kind of get a sense, Aaron, and I know at least some of these athletes, they're nice to fans. They're they'll sign or whatever, but it's just kind of like a what's up, how you doing? Stevie's a different cat, man. I'm telling you, I was really observing him in firsthand, and people come up to him, he has conversations with people. Like kids come up for their autograph and he starts talking to them and asking them questions. He just doesn't sign the thing. And a pretty cool thing too is he has this green hat, Bill's hat.
I've seen, the corduroy.
Yeah, and it's got writing and shit on it. I always thought maybe, I don't know what the hell is on there. And I noticed this sometimes when a kid will ask him for an autograph, Stevie will sign, but then Stevie will take his hat off and he'll give the marker to the kid and he'll have the kid autograph his hat.
Pretty cool.
And then he puts it on his head, man. Anyway, yeah, really cool too, man. That was a fun show and a fun interview. We talked about he's got a new book that just came out, a new children's book. Him and Charlie Roberts co-authored one. It's about Freddie Jackson, actually. Pretty cool book, man. So we talked about that, just his feelings about living or being in Buffalo for all these years, because he's back and forth. He might be back here soon enough, full time. It was a really fun interview, man. Cool dude.
Is he? He was podcasting for a while. Is he gonna?
I don't know. We didn't talk about that.
Yeah.
I did talk to because a fan who was at the restaurant at Imperial made me ask him about Revis Island, because I don't know if you remember, he just seemed to do really well against Daryl Revis in matchups, man. I mean, Darrell was locking people down, but for whatever reason, Stevie had a lot of success against him. And he talked about on the show basketball moves. He just said it kind of caught Darrell by surprise, and
we sort of we were talking about Stevie the other day on Twitter Spaces,
Mhm.
talking about some of the younger wide receivers in the room for the Bills and saying like, I think one of the guys brought up, I forget who it was, like, hey, just like stick them with Stephon Diggs and learn to run routes like Diggs. And my point was, Diggs is kind of one of one how he runs those routes. I don't know if you
Yeah.
remember that one against the Saints a couple years ago where he just like twisted up. I think it was Lattimore
Mhm.
by the goal line. And like, not a lot of guys can do that. And I brought up Stevie Johnson. Like, that would be like saying, oh, just go hang out with Stevie Johnson and learn to run routes like him. You can't. Like, he just played with such a one of one style at the position that not a lot of it's like wide receiver coaches will teach you not to do the stuff Stevie
Yeah.
was doing, but it just worked for him. It was unorthodox, but the guy was open all the time. And he had some real crazy crossover sick moves that were basketball moves that he brought to football. And I don't think, I know he runs those camps and helps kids and stuff. I'm sure they get stuff, but some of these guys is just, you could sit and watch them and try to do what they do all day, but I don't think anyone's ever going to replicate routes the way Stevie did them.
Yeah, I mean, great route runner. And like I said, just a really great person, man. I was really impressed just sitting and watching him interact with people. Genuinely happy. You could just tell how much he loves Buffalo. He knows that Buffalo gave him a lot, and I
That
mean, and you could tell he's grateful and he's got a lot of gratitude.
that catch in Toronto against Seattle might be one of the coolest Bills catches I've ever seen, and definitely the only cool play to ever happen in Toronto. I feel like.
So anyway, go check that out, man. It was like I said, it was a fun interview. It's on YouTube. It's on all audio platforms. As well. You mentioned we're going to get into some Bills talk here in just a minute. You mentioned this being, the time of year, the weather's starting to get nice. You're sitting there chilling in a t-shirt, and I am. I'm a hoodie guy, by the way. I'll wear a hoodie
I had a hoodie on just a minute ago. No, I was
as,
just walking. So
as often as I could get away with it. Plus, I mean, I do have, it's a little cooler in the house. Sometimes I'll throw the air or some fans on and stuff like that. But anyway, something I'm noticing on Twitter and especially my Facebook, my social media with my friends is with the weather, it's that time of year where kids are starting t-ball or baseball or softball or soccer. Even football practice is starting for Little Loop now. And it this is one of the things that I talk with you about sometimes. And I get a little bit envious of you in a way is, my son, I just probably the best times of my life, maybe the most fulfilling parts of it, I should say at least. Was watching him come up through sports. Football and baseball were the two sports that he played a lot. And it was this time of year where things really got cooking. And man, I really miss that shit. And you're at an age right now and your kids where they're going to be starting stuff like that. And you're just kind of getting through that journey. And again, whatever sport it is they play or whatever activity it is that they do, you just I get a little bit envious of people like you right now that are going, look, it's not all fun and games, Yeah, a lot of commitment, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of money. You're going to spend a lot of stuff like that. So, I mean, it's not like all glory and stuff like
right,
that. But,
right.
I get a little bit envious when I think of people like you and a lot of my friends, and I see their little kids right now that are starting sports just because it goes so fast. It's like, I feel like it was just a couple of years ago, I could be talking to you about Shane playing just getting started with high school football. And now he's
Yeah.
done playing. It's just, it goes so fast, man.
I'm torn on this one, Pat, because I love sports. Grew up playing sports. I was pretty good. It wasn't great, but I enjoyed it. It was a big part of my youth and a really foundational piece for some of the stuff that you need. I think some life lessons come from sports.
Mm-hmm.
I'm torn though, because I hate to sound like some old crackety, cranky guys, but it isn't what it used to be when I was a kid. Kids sports today seems weird, and I'm really nervous about getting into it. I know that you can kind of make it what you want for your kids, but there's a lot of pressure around kids sports nowadays and at a young age. And I don't like that. And I've talked to a lot of different parents about this because I'm nervous. Buffalo's a big hockey community, and you see travel hockey teams for little kids, young kids, and you see these kids, even if they're really good at it, they get locked into one sport because it's all year round now. Where when I was a kid, man, baseball season was baseball season, football, like everything had its seasons. There weren't travel teams were AAU, and you had to be the best of the best to be on travel teams. Not anyone could just be on a travel team and play all year soccer and all year everything. I think it's good for kids to get multiple experiences and not be pigeoned into one sport. And a lot of the times, I'm sure kids like it, and there are kids that are good, but I think a lot of the time the pressure comes from the parent. and wanting that to be good. And I think there's going to be a high burnout rate on a lot of these kids in these sports. My neighbor is a hockey coach for one of the local colleges, and his son's really into hockey. He played hockey his whole life, and his big thing is trying to get him to do as many other sports as possible because he sees kids get burnt out by the time they get into high school because they've already put in so much time into this. And I'm nervous about that type of thing. I'm trying to make sure my kids are finding a healthy balance of like sports is cool. It's something you should do. We want them to participate in something every season, to be active, but not take it too seriously, right? Like my kid did not win the genetic lottery. He's probably going to be 5'10", flat-footed, a little bit overweight. Like that's just how he's going to be. Medium athletic. He's not going to be great at anything. So take it for the experience it's going to be. I think too much pressure is put on kids to do too much, to be too much. And it concerns me. And then the way parents act with kids sports, I don't want any part of it. Like coaches, crazy parents, people just go too all in. It's kids sports. It's just supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be like all my kids got all these trophies and travel teams and all that stuff. And I'm a little nervous getting into it, Pat. I don't know how it was for you. I feel like Shane's age might have been like in between this period of time where everything got.
I feel like you're speaking to me. Yeah. You're right. Because I saw firsthand with my son. My son didn't end up playing college football despite having 14 offers. Yeah. 80% of that was just physical. He was just really beat up all the time, and he just didn't want to put his body through going through that year round, because it's a year round thing when you get to a certain level of football, at least anyway, I'm talking about. Anyway, 80% of that might have been physical, but I'll tell you what, 20% I'll bet you was burnout, pressure. And, maybe a little bit here and there from mom and dad, but honestly, we're very supportive, and I was always very mindful of what you're talking about because I agree with you 1,000,000,000,000%. I think you're 100% right. But that pressure, when you get to at least certain levels anyway, it's there. We went to Florida. Florida is literally 365 days a year. That's football year round and training year round. And you do get pressure, man. You get pressure from coaches because it's just the competitive level down there is just on another level. Coaches, recruiters, colleges, teammates, opponents down there. I'm sure it's like that everywhere. I'm not just saying it's only in Florida. It's like that in Buffalo, I'm sure, and everywhere else. But to your point, it can get like that. And Shane liked playing multiple sports. By the time he got down in Florida, it was just football, and it was year round. And like you said, I'll tell you, I don't mind saying it now. I guarantee you that there was a point that, he did get a little bit burned out. So anyway, people watching, listening, I think Aaron brings up a great point, man. Let your kids enjoy sports. Don't put too much pressure on them. Get them into as many things. I'll tell you one other thing too, Aaron, a lot, and I know a lot of, pro athletes. Most of these guys played more than one sport growing up. They did other things too. So I couldn't agree with you more there as well. But yeah, man, just enjoy it.
I think we get so hyper focused on this period of time in somebody's life. It's such a small period of time. One thing, I started playing golf at an early age, and kids used to make fun of me in high school because I played football growing up, and they tried getting me to play football for my high school team. Like whenever we played pickup, I played semi-pro. Like I can play football, but my thing was it's high school football, and I'm not going to live in those glory days of high school football. I'm not going to be that great. I'm not going to get a college scholarship. I wanted to learn how to play golf, and I was like, I had a bunch of friends tear ACLs, breaking arms, doing all this stuff, having surgeries. It's like 14-year-old, 15-year-old kids. And I'm thinking like, none of these kids are ever going to play it down of football past the age of 18, 19. Like you're putting all this sacrifice, all this work, all this effort, which is fine. If that's the thing you love and you're good at it, I'm not knocking anybody. But like for me, all these kids were making fun of me. And I was like, shoot, I'm going to be able to play golf until I'm 80. Like this is a hobby, not a sport. Right. And so I just think that so much pressure gets on people that, it's just got to be enjoyed. Most people aren't going to get scholarships. Most people aren't going to do much past the high school level with those sports. So if you want to enjoy them, do it, enjoy them. But I think a lot of pressure is put on these kids, and kids aren't always able to tell their parents that, right? That it's too much, or that there's anxiety that comes from that type of pressure. And they want to, I can see it in my son's eyes. I'm trying to have honest conversations with him. Like, you don't have to like the things that I like just to make me happy. Kids want to make their parents happy. And I want to put it through to them. Like, hey, don't ever feel pressure to live up to what my expectations are. Like, do you, buddy?
Yeah, I could agree more. And you know what? Not even just football, baseball. I see it too all the time. High school kids, 13, 14 years old, they're throwing curveballs or breaking balls. You're at your elbow. The strength in your arm is not designed to be doing this shit. at that age. But yeah, man, when you're first little kids though, and I see these little videos, little T-ball, and they're just smiles on their face and shit. That's the stuff
that's the best.
I kind of really miss. It makes me feel old. You're just getting ready to start going through all these processes.
The learning process is so I love basketball. That's probably my first love as a sport. Played it the most at anything I played in. My oldest is really getting into it. We dribble every day, going to school. Like, I love that. And I'm trying to not put pressure on him. And I keep having my wife pull me back because he wants to learn and he wants me to teach him. But sometimes he gets frustrated. And so I'm like, hey, come on, we got to do this. And then, what's the line? Where do I push too hard? Where do I, provide discipline? So I'm working through all that stuff. But you're right. The learning process, like seeing him gain confidence, is a really cool thing. Seeing your little guy come from I don't know what I'm doing to being pretty confident in something.
And even beyond the sport itself, just learning to bond with other kids. You know what I'm saying? That chemistry that you develop with other kids by being involved and stuff too. I think that's important. You mentioned basketball here. So we're taping this Tuesday morning. Don't know if the Heat are going to finish off the Celtics. We'll find that out. But on Monday night, Denver finished off the Lakers, a 4-game sweep.
I don't think Jordan never got swept in a 7-game series, but I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. But
I knew you were going to come up with something like that. Look, I know you're half joking, at least half joking anyway. Look, he's like, I hate the LeBron bash, and I do. We talked about this before. Nobody's changing anybody. I'm Team Jordan, by the way. Michael Jordan's the greatest player of all time, so I'm with you there. But my whole thing is, every time LeBron does something great, it's like, oh, and this is why he's better than Jordan. Or every time he does it, this is why he's not. No, you're never going to change anyone's mind. If you're Jordan,
it's a generational thing,
right? Exactly, it's a generational thing. But anyway, my one take is this: forget LeBron, forget Michael. Dude, Joker is the best player in the NBA, bar none, maybe by far. He might be the best big man I've ever seen, dude. Offensively, he's literally unstoppable. And I trust me, I've spent, my life watching Hakeem Olajuwon and Shaq and Ewing, a lot of these great big men. This dude can hit threes like a small forward. He does everything. He's averaging like a triple-double. It's insane. I mean, not like a fill up the stat sheet, who gives a shit because we lose all the time, Russell Westbrook triple-double. I'm talking like legit big-time moments, big-time player. Dude, he just does everything. He's unbelievable. 2 straight MVPs. Could have been 3 this year. They give it to Embiid, but dude is, oh God, he's lethal, man. It's like, well, it's almost like he's so good. I don't think people even really appreciate how good he is.
No, he is. I'm torn on some of this conversation. My brother and I constantly talk about, is Steph Curry the greatest shooter of all time? Because I think everybody sees the statistics and the way he fills up stat sheets. But I have one point on this in terms of generational basketball, right? Like, the game's changed. It really has evolved. And I think there are players that could have done similar things to what Jokic is doing now, but they were not allowed to play that way. Like, bigs were not allowed to play the way bigs play today. Even 10 years ago, the idea that you would have forwards and centers playing on the perimeter and shooting threes, like, that was a new idea. You started to get Dirk really stretch the floor and having that stretch four position. That was a new thing 10, 15 years ago. Could Hakeem Olajuwon been a stretch player? Probably. Could he have brought the ball up and pass the way he does? Sabonis in his early days, could have those players have been more in the way Jokic plays? I think they could have. I think they could have been those talents, but nobody was even thinking that way about basketball. It comes back to, I was just having this conversation about people crapping on the Trailblazers for passing on Michael Jordan. But you got to remember, the NBA at this period of time, nobody was running two guards. It was very clearly defined positions. You had point guards, you had shooting guards, you had small forwards, and they were all different. They had different body types. So the idea of putting Jordan and Drexler together didn't even register in people's heads at the time. Like, you have to have the context of how basketball is. And so I agree with you. We've never seen the talent displayed this way that he's doing. Yeah. I think the most impressive thing to me is the passing from Jokic and the way that he can just bring the ball up, get that transition going. And he just always seems to find
vision. He's got great
vision. And it looks like he's playing in slow motion. It looks like me playing down at the YMCA with a bunch of kids on the small hoops.
that 3-pointer he hit over Anthony Davis right at the buzzer when the shot clock was expiring, pretty much game-winning shot, just incredible, man. But you're an NBA guy too. It's intriguing to me, but more than likely a Denver Miami finals matchup doesn't really. I'm not sure the league really likes that. I mean, Boston, LA, in which give credit to Denver and probably Miami, but I wanted to watch because I'm an old school guy. Bird versus Magic, LA versus Boston. That would have been cool. It's just a Denver Miami. It's just not It's not a sexy matchup.
Oh, I disagree. I think networks and leagues want the big markets to succeed. I think fans want to see small markets, teams that haven't done anything before. I think the Jimmy Butler story is fantastic. You're going to get a lot of people rooting for Jimmy Butler. He is just a fun character in the game. He's badass dude. He's so good. It's such a fun story. Trash talk, and everybody loves that. But I think you're going to get a lot of people rooting for Denver getting that first one, right? Yeah. Like, there's always that, like, hey, this team is just never, they've been mostly irrelevant throughout NBA history. This is their first finals appearance. Like, that's cool. That's good for the game. What the NBA has been lacking for 10 years or more now is real parity. And like, you just know when you go into the season who are going to be in the finals. And it's like the regular season doesn't matter. It's going to be Golden State versus the Cavs for 5 years straight. And there's nothing anybody can do about it. And that was the big complaint whenever I talk to people that used to watch basketball. I was like, it's just too much. It's top heavy. You know who's going to win. Everyone's building these super teams. And now there's a real likelihood that this year you have two teams that are not super teams. In fact, they are built in very different ways than we've seen successful teams be built in the past. And so I believe I'm like more of a basketball purist. To me, that's way more exciting than seeing the LeBron James Lakers and the Celtics with somewhat of a big three and some of the best players in the league going at it, where you have smaller markets. You still have some of the best players in the league, but it's smaller markets that aren't what you would traditionally think of stacked teams. These are teams with good role players, good coaches that are getting the most out of their rotations. Like, that's true playoff basketball to me.
Agreed. And I do like Denver, especially Denver. Their best couple players are drafted. And, these are kind of low-key veteran pieces that they put together. By the way, Joker was the 41st pick of the 2014 draft. He wasn't even a first-round pick, dude. He was a second-round pick. That's just insane, man. Anyway, we'll see what happens. It should be a fun matchup. I just don't think the league is too excited about it. But anyway, DeAndre Hopkins, got to bring him up real quick, too.
Yeah.
This is just shit that won't die, man. It's just never going to die.
OBJ of last year.
To be fair, this ain't fans like Patrick and Aaron or, content creators like us bringing this shit up. It's not mainstream media bringing this shit up. It's DeAndre Hopkins who's bringing this shit up. He was on that I Am Athlete podcast, and he was asked point blank, guys he'd like to catch passes from. And quite literally, the first person he said was Josh Allen. So it's like, that just ignites, I don't want to say trade rumors because, that's him talking, not Buffalo, but he clearly, dude, he wants to be, there's no denying this. The guy would like to be in Buffalo, and it's kind of, what a great player to want to play for the Buffalo Bills, your partner on Cover One on your podcast, Greg, put out a tweet about, let's just pretend, and we've done this before, but pretend that the Bills wanted to bring in DeAndre Hopkins. And he talked about you had to take out his initial contract at trade unless Arizona would take out money. Then you could restructure. But he was talking about I'm looking at it right now, between Deion Dawkins, Trey White, between restructuring them and extending DaQuan Jones, Micah Hyde, or Jaron Johnson, you'd have to do 4 of those 5 scenarios to come up with money to be able to take on that contract. It's just the guy talking, with his boys on a podcast that, hey, it'd be cool to catch passes from Josh and nothing more. You think at this point?
It's a mix, right? So I'll push back a little bit to your point of like it's coming from DeAndre. He was specifically asked. They were probing him with some questions of,
sure.
I think if I'm going to make an assumption here that DeAndre's team is not done trying to get him out of Arizona, and this is a push in that direction. He's not attending OTAs. He's going to work out in Toronto, which is fine. There's not really a story behind that. Diggs might not show up to OTAs. I don't know. And I'm not going to care either way.
Right.
But some of the questions seemed a little pointed, and Brandon Marshall made a point to talk about him demanding his release from the Jets so that he could go seek out, at that point in his career. And they talked about that a lot to Hopkins, like, hey, you're getting to the point of your career. Do you want to get thrown to by a young rookie QB anymore? They're asking about some of the rookie QBs. And he's like, no, I don't want that. Like, what are the things you are looking for in your career at this point? There was just a lot of that sort of, pushing him towards making some of these comments. And the wanting to play with Josh Allen, obviously we're going to draw that connection. He even said, in the early trade things, the only two teams he really heard about was the New England Patriots and the Buffalo Bills. So I think, yes, he would want to play for the Buffalo Bills. I'm sure there are other teams on his list that he'd be willing to go play for. But Buffalo Bills should be on the top of any skill position players list. They are potent offense. They are pass first offense. They have Josh Allen, who by every single metric and standard is a top 5, top 3 quarterback in the league.
Sure.
Even with how wonky the offense looked last year, he's still a top 3 quarterback by almost every measure. And so, of course, he's going to want to play for a team like that. He also said, obviously I'd love to play for Patrick Mahomes and all these other top quarterbacks too. So I don't know. Some of it we got to see. I think the most likely scenario is there. I don't think a trade is very likely. To Greg's point, just a lot of stuff has to happen for that to even become a possibility for the Bills. And they really have to leverage some of those deals. And I know they are willing to. I don't know that they want to. I think the most likely scenario that this plays out where DeAndre Hopkins plays anywhere but Arizona is them actually giving him the release that he wants. And then he can go out and find a contract with a team. And then I think Buffalo's really in play there. If it becomes he gets released, it's Buffalo and KC. But I think Buffalo would have more of a appeal and draw to him with the way this offense is set up right now. And he even talked about it being able to play with that other wide receiver to get him open. You got Diggs right here.
If DeAndre Hopkins were in play, whether it was a trade, which I do not see a trade happening. I'm just going to throw that out there. Or he does eventually get released and he's interested in coming to Buffalo, or the interest is mutual. Let's just assume that were to happen after the draft and after what the Bills did, drafting Dalton Kincaid in the first round, who's probably going to play a lot of big slot. At this point, if you're to bring in DeAndre Hopkins, trade or free agency or whatever you want to call it, do you got to get rid of Gabe Davis? Can you have both of them on the roster? How do you bring in DeAndre Hopkins with Diggs, with Kincaid, with Knox, and still have Gabe Davis in the pick or in the mix? My first thought was, if the Bills were to trade for DeAndre Hopkins, I want to said this before the draft, but now after the draft, I would almost be like, Gabe Davis needs to be part of that trade. He'd have to go to Arizona. Or if they were to sign him as a free agent, you try to move him somewhere else. What do you think, man? Do you think this is a team that can bring in Hopkins and still have Gabe Davis? Because I just don't see it at this point.
Well, one, I'm okay with that problem, right? Like trying to find, we have too many weapons and we got to figure out how to use them all. That's a good problem to have. I'm not sure what the trade value you would get for Gabe Davis, but maybe the point is you just get whatever you can and stockpile some picks. This team loves Gabe Davis. They really do. They like him a lot more than the fan base does. So I don't know. I'm torn on this. I'd be willing to just keep him and have the problem of having too many good wide receivers. You still would have Diggs and Hopkins being up at that age where injuries start to happen. You start to run into a wall. Maybe the plan would be more, hey, with Diggs and Hopkins, we're going to do a little bit of load management here throughout the season and just ramp them into being ready for December, January, February football, versus giving them a high percentage of snaps in September, October, November, when you can win without that. And you have a young player in Gabe Davis that the best case scenario for the Buffalo Bills is Gabe Davis, AJ Epinesa, Ed Oliver, all these guys that are coming up on these expiring deals have productive years. The best thing that could happen is they have productive years that translates to helping the Bills win games. And then they go on and get inflated contracts in the offseason. And then we're playing in comp pick formula again, year in and year out, where that comp pick is going to be pretty big. The one that you got for Tremaine Edmonds, and going forward, being stockpiled some picks into next year. If he can get more picks going into the future, that's how he's going to be able to continue to make trade ups from the late first round back up into the mids and move around the board, or be able to, whenever a DeAndre Hopkins type deal comes up, have some stockpile of picks that, hey, we can move some of this stuff. So it's an interesting problem to have, but man, these are the kind of problems I've wanted. The whole drought, these are the problems I wanted. Like, we're too flush at wide receiver, and we're no longer relying on undrafted free agents to come in and make an impact here. We're trying to figure out how are they going to keep all the guys that they have on the roster, and are they going to have to trade some?
All right, I am back with Aaron Quinn from Cover One. Before the break, we were talking about DeAndre Hopkins. I won't say it's a 0% chance, 10%. I think the Bills are high enough on Gabe Davis that they're good with going with what they got. Again, I would have put that percentage higher, and maybe you could have all three guys, Diggs, Davis, and Gabe working in before the draft. But after that, I'm just I'm not as sold on that. Anyway, OTAs this week, man. Overrated. I don't know any other way to say it. It's just so overrated. I understand though, media, fans, we just want to sink our teeth into literally anything. You know, you got after the season, you get free agency, and then after free agency, you get the draft, and now you got this big lull where nothing happens really of significance before training camp. So anything that you can get your eyes or your ears on, you want to sink your teeth into. So I get it from that aspect, but still, I think, and I know you think, too much stock is put into freaking OTA. So I go ahead.
Yeah, it's an important part of the process. It is important for the players. I think OTAs are dumb. I think they're dumb for media. I think they're dumb for fans. I don't think you can draw any speculation out of it. Every Tuesday, the media is going to be there. The Bills are going to give them absolutely nothing of substance.
Correct.
That is going to matter. And anything that people see, they're going to be like, oh my God, Bates is playing at tackle, and everybody's going to freak out. Well, Aaron Cromer likes to try guys out of different positions this time of year to get them to know this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The real stuff is happening in the training room, in the film room, breaking down that stuff. That's where getting these young guys up to speed. Veterans don't need OTAs. The DeAndre Hopkins talked about that. Like, you get to a certain point in your career where, yes, NFL trainers are great, all this stuff's great, but you get to a certain point where you know your body, you know what you need to do to ramp up to the season. You don't need to be there. You don't need to do that unless you have a new coaching staff or whatever it is. You need to learn a whole new system, which on defense, the Bills might have some of that going on, but there is going to be too many things written about we need to keep an eye on this big roster position battle. Like, that stuff's not shaking out until pads get on. Straight up. Sean McDermott is not giving it. Like, he might put Dane Jackson ahead of somebody on the depth chart going into OTAs, and people will see, oh, so-and-so lined up at cornerback 2 first. Doesn't matter. Totally irrelevant. None of it matters. It's absolutely ridiculous. There's no speculation to be driven from that. Where guys line up on the offensive line, where Dalton Kincaid's lining up, like, it is all kind of trial and error, seeing how things work, putting things together. And definitely in the media portions, they're not going to give you anything that they are actually trying to do or showcase. Again, a lot of this isn't, even those first few days at training camp is really still the ramp up period. Until pads come on, those real competitions begin.
I agree. I kind of had a smirk on my face while you're talking, because I'm thinking in my mind, because I know these guys and these women, and no matter what we say right now, I know that the Sal Capaccios and the Joe Biscaglias and the Matt Marinos and the Jay Skursies, all these guys are going to write stories pretty much about everything.
They have to. It's nothing personal.
No.
They don't have to. Actually, I'm going to take that back. They don't have to, because they could just talk about, there doesn't have to be the additional like speculation of like, oh, this is the thing everybody needs to keep their eye on this roster battle at OTAs. They could just talk about what OTAs are and what it means. It doesn't have to be speculative. You don't have to write articles that make people click. They probably get pressure from editors and people above them, but right now there is I don't know how to say this. There's a big pushback to what traditional media thinks the consumer wants and what the consumer actually wants. And Pat McAfee's like a big example of, you saw that New York Post article of like, oh, the ESPN's doing something so stupid and getting Pat McAfee. It's like, you guys don't even understand what your consumers are really looking for. You're just looking at data and seeing clicks and just, hey, how do we get more of those? And clicks aren't always necessarily in line with what people are truly looking for content.
I agree. That's a fair point. Well, you put out a tweet and you said, I can't wait to see something along the lines. I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me, but something about just training camp, what overrated storylines do we get to look for? And I went through some of your mentions, and I want to point a couple of these out because I thought these were pretty entertaining, and I could totally, that's why I was laughing, because I could see stories or segments of talk being, focused on these, but
articles about a video tweet.
Lauren Elizabeth, and again, these are responses to your tweet about OTAs being overrated. And what overrated storylines we can look forward to. And Lauren Elizabeth said vids of Dalton Kincaid catching passes from Josh Allen. Mr. Snow, whether Spencer Brown can be the All-Pro he's expected to be.
Yeah. I can see a lot of articles of like, oh man, Spencer Brown looks great. He's gonna have that big leap of a year. He looks real great in shorts.
Right. I'm just laughing just because some people took the context of what you were saying and had fun with it. It wasn't. Some people weren't being serious. Our guy Bruce Nolan over at Buffalo Rumblings. This is a good one. Justin Shorter. I think a lot's going to be written about him just because of how he physically looks and moves. So
he's going to be an OTA. I mean, if you're going to succeed in OTA and in shorts, you're going to be a Justin Shorter.
Right? Absolutely, man. So I do think he's going to be an OTA and maybe even a training camp star for sure. Yeah. Adam Run Strong, he wrote, this is another good one. Every pass from Josh slightly off mark and what it implies about the health of his elbow
or his mentals of his breakup.
Breakup. He's not
his head's not in it.
Yeah, he's not focused. He's he's going around golf tournaments and shit like that. Kentucky Derby. He doesn't care about football no more.
Too much golf.
Yeah, the good chip. This one I can see kind of happening too. He says either Epinesa or Boogie shows up in the best shape of their life and look extremely fast off the edge. Totally can see that. He looks in shape this year. He's ripped. He's moving real fast.
The Devin Singletary picture a couple of years ago where he's all jacked up and then nothing changed. Right.
And then, and again, I'm not worried about this either, but a lot of people said, and some jokingly and some serious, because I do think this is at least, if there is a talking point worth it with this OTA, and we don't know, well, you'll know when you're listening to this or watching this tomorrow, but if Stephon Diggs is going to be there or not.
Right.
Again, not a big deal. I don't think it's a big deal one way or the other. That said, I'm not going to lie. I'd like to see him there. Sure. The way the season ended, just some of the frustration that he was very visibly had. And I know he's still staying in shape. He's working out. He's going to be fine. Yeah. But I'd like to see him get into OTAs, get a little chemistry going with Josh, t-shirts and shorts. I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? So I think there's a little bit of substance to that one, whether he's going to be there or not. You agree?
No. I don't. I mean, yes, preferably everybody's there and everything's fantastic and everybody's hanging out and they're playing Call of Duty and slapping butts and it's all fun and games, but I don't care and I don't think it has any impact on anything that happens for the 2023 season. He's going to show up and put in work when he needs to. Probably the player that I'm least concerned about being ready is Stephon Diggs. Mm-hmm. He knows where he's at in this point in his career. Just go listen to that DeAndre Hopkins interview and how he talks about OTAs. I think a lot of people feel that same way in the league, and Diggs deservedly doesn't have to be there. Like he's done, he has proven himself in the league. Like you said, he's going to be ready. He's going to be in shape to go. And training camp's long. He's got plenty of time to get on the same page with Josh Allen. So I'm not worried about it. Not worried about the relationship. Winning will fix everything. They'll be back in just fine. But yeah, no. If he shows up, fantastic. It's better. We don't have to talk about it, but I have absolutely zero concern if he's there or not.
What are, with again, the understanding that OTAs for the most part are what they are, but overrated or whatever, what are one or two things maybe that you are most interested between in the next couple weeks that, or just things between now and training camp in general when it comes to the Bills? What are one or two things that you are most interested in? Again, roster, positional battles, they're not going to be won in May or June. Mm-hmm. So I know that, you know that. But that said, maybe one or two interesting things involving the Bills that kind of perk you up a little bit, if anything.
For OTAs,
minicamp, maybe mandatory minicamp.
I think the things that are going to really start perking me up again is when we get to camp. What's this defense look like?
Mm-hmm.
How does Sean McDermott's version of this defense differ from Leslie Frazier's? And are we going to see it real early on? And is it going to be a dramatic difference in philosophy? The signing of a Taylor Rapp type thing. How are they going to implement that safety? We just brought in Dean Marlowe again yesterday. So they're pretty flush in depth at the safety position. What are they thinking there? How are they going to do that?
Speak on that. I guess he's could be just a training camp body, but I mean, you got Hyde, you got Poyer, you got Rapp, you got Hamlin, you got Cam Lewis.
Yep.
Yeah, Marlowe. It's a lot of safeties,
Yeah,
veteran
but
safeties too.
think about how thin that got a year ago.
Sure.
Right? Like going into training camp, having all those guys on your roster gives you the flexibility to have the depth where you don't have to run Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyden on the ground over the summer. Right. We don't want to do that. I think that's going to be the biggest case of load management we're going to see is those aging
Absolutely.
safeties. We saw
You
what
already
happened
know
to
what they can
Jordan
do.
last year. Yeah. They know what
You
they're
know.
doing. Take it easy. Have a nice summer. Wear your bucket hats. Chill out. Like, don't go crazy. So I think you're going to need some depth there. And then Dean Marlowe, there's a good chance he's that practice squad vet, that you just have hanging out because safety depth really depleted last year where you were playing guys. Jaquan Johnson doesn't deserve snaps at safety in the NFL. You're playing some guys that just, Cam Lewis being put in the position to have to play safety. Just, I don't know. You want to be able to be past that. And so having this types of depth, I think, gives you that ability and allows you to have a little bit more flexibility with not putting the pressure on Poyer and Hyde to do so much this summer and getting ready.
I like Cam Lewis. I like his story. Root for him to succeed, but him having to play safety and start a safety against the Minnesota Vikings was a big reason why they lost that game, straight up. And it's ultimately a big reason why they didn't get home field advantage throughout the playoffs because they lost that game. Von Miller, you're going to get a lot of vanilla talk about Vaughn, and you're not going to hear anything more than he's on schedule. But
sure,
I'm interested over the next handful of weeks and months, see how he's moving around. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing, I think this is maybe one of the most understated things about this Buffalo Bills team last year. I want to see Trey White moving around again at 100% speed because I'll tell you what, if he's back to the way he was pre-injury, he's one of the best corners in the entire NFL. Mm-hmm. He came back last year and he was a shell of what he was before the injury. But I think that's just because maybe has to be expected coming back from the injury. I by no means think his career's washed up.
No, yeah.
I just think, you know what I'm saying? I want to see him 100% healthy and moving around like he did with confidence, like he did before the injury. I think that's something that if there is a storyline that I care about right now with OTAs and minicamp, I want to see Trey White moving around and I want to hear good reports about him.
Yeah, this is a one for me that is one of my most frustrating conversations that I have about football and injuries is because we've seen people come back way sooner than they should and come back and play well. Really, Adrian Peterson ruined ACL injuries and the expectation of those years ago with how people should recover from them. Because honestly, we had this conversation with Harrison Phillips when he tore his and everybody expected him to come right back right away. And it took a full year and a half. Trey White was the same thing last year. People were so frustrated that he barely passed the deadline of a year. And people were getting like, he doesn't love football. He doesn't care enough to get out there. And it's like, dude,
we heard that
less than a year from a full, it's still a major surgery. Getting ACL surgery, we don't think of it as a major surgery anymore. I think people kind of think of it as like almost, just an operation and you're back within a year or less. That's not true. And when you are back, you're not back to the person you were before. It takes at least a full year and a half, if not 2 years. So I don't know why we still have this conversation and don't think about that. The way people are talking about Trey White absolutely drove me bananas last year. Like, you can't say a guy doesn't care because he's worried about his body and doesn't want to rush back from an injury too quick and further hurt himself in his prime. Like, that would have been absolutely stupid. So you got to wait for a guy to be ready. I think there's a lot of expectation. A guy like Vaughn is going to come back early because he talks about it. You see the videos, he looks good. I think we need to anticipate that even if he does come back, that he isn't going to be the 100% Von Miller that we saw last year. He'll still be better than any defensive end that the Bills have, but it's going to take a little bit of time. And to that point, I think the way we look at Trey White at the end of the year last year, there's a lot of context in how he looked, right? The safety play behind him, very questionable at the end of the year, which matters, right? When Trey White's playing at his best, it's also when Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer are playing at their best. There's a correlation there, in how everybody plays. Also, we know, I think everybody tries to say what's more important, coverage or pass rush, getting to the quarterback or playing good in coverage. And it's both. The answer is both. They all work together. It depends on the play. It works in unison. And the Bills' defensive pressure really dropped when Von Miller went out. And then Trey White came back right when Von Miller went out. You saw the drop in QB pressures and getting to the quarterback. And you're going to see an increase in production behind that. And then you add in the safety problems and him recovering from injury. I think it was just a perfect storm of, for fans, it doesn't look like the Trey White that we're used to. It doesn't feel like the Trey White we're used to, but he made plays. He made plays where he got beat, came back and broke up the play. he was right there step for step with guys. I thought I saw enough from Trey to feel like, okay, if we get the safety back and we can get some pressure with defense, Trey's going to go right back into where he was. And again, giving him the liberty of having that full year and a half of recovery behind him. Trey, I get why people want to see it. I think you're right. I think that's probably one of the better storylines of this period is seeing him move around and having that confidence. But I'm still fully confident in Trey returning to the player that he was pre-injury.
I am too. Yeah, that started last year. Once that bye came, and because everybody said he'll be back after that bye, and when it didn't happen, that's when some of the idiots came out of the woodwork. I'll admit it though. I agree with you. I think who plays behind him matters, and he just wasn't 100% last year.
Sure.
That Cincinnati game, I remember that Monday night game. It didn't last long, but he got cooked early in that game, and it was worrisome. But yeah, I think he's one of the best corners. He is one of the best corners in the NFL when healthy. Before we wrap up in a few minutes here with our fill in the blank questions at the end, without getting into like an extensive discussion on it, I'm sure we could do that another day. But again, we're kind of sticking with this OTAs for the most part overrated theme today. But is there one or two guys that you could think of that maybe even starting this week between now and when the pads go on in training camp? Although you're not really going to prove anything until the pads come on, but generally speaking, like who do you think has the most to prove right now? Like you look at this roster, a couple guys that you're like, yo, we got to see more. You got a lot to prove right now. Who are one or two guys that you can come up with?
Well, so what you're not going to get really till the pads come on is along the line. You're not going to be able to see anything like Spencer Brown's not going to pop until the pads come on. AJ Epinesa, Boogie Basham, but those are all guys that I need. Ed Oliver, that as training camp ramps up, I really need to see that they're taking some kind of step forward. But that those will be later. In terms of maybe you'll see something in these other periods of time. Gabe Davis would be one. How is he being? What routes is he running in the stuff? Is it all the same, just go route stuff? Is he clamping the ball? Like, has he changed some of how he catches? How is his usage? Khalil Shakir, where he's at. I think he's had a weird offseason in that they brought in Hardy and paid him pretty decently.
Sure.
And so you're expecting that there's going to be some level of production or number of touches that are going his way that maybe we thought were going to go Shakir's way. So where's he at in his development? I think that'll be a big storyline coming up. I'm trying to think, obviously Kincaid's going to be a huge story in anything that he does and where he's lining up. Anyone else? Maybe Kaiir Elam is a sneaky one in that year two's expected that he's really going to solidify that starting role. We saw him finish the year strong, make a real case to be cornerback too, but Dane Jackson's still on this team and they do believe in him. And Christian Benford won that starting job over Kaiir Elam in training camp a year ago. Can he keep that off? Can he maintain, hit the ground running where he took off last year? I don't know if you'll find that out in this period of time, but those are some of the guys that I'll be watching, more of the skill position stuff and maybe what that running back rotation looks like early, stuff like that. But again, they could come out and Latavius Murray Harris could be taking those RB1 reps. That doesn't mean anything, right? Like this time of year, it could just be, hey, we're giving it to the older guy to start just because that's the way the running back room wants to run it, right? So it's more movement. How are guys moving? Where's guys' confidence? Are they making plays on the ball when it's in the air? Stuff like that. So mostly at the skill positions for me.
Shakir's the guy when you were naming some guys that pops out for me as well. Him and Hardy, that could be an interesting little battle, whether it's for that slot position when they're not playing with two tight ends or they're going four receiver sets. I could see that brewing skill position wise. When the pad comes on, that's a different story. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of. It feels like there's a good handful of depth battles that we're going to see this summer. Doesn't necessarily feel like there's a lot of roster position 53-man battles. I mean, you might see one or two that you don't see coming or whatever.
It won't be for starting spots necessarily. It'll be for like percentages of rotations, right? Like I think your starters for the most part, middle linebackers questionable, right?
Sure.
Who's starting next to Groot while Vaughn recovers might be one, but outside of that, it's really going to be what are the percentages on the rotations for Shakir, for Hardy, stuff like that. So kind of refining the edges. And Pat, I'm going to keep going back to right after the Bengals game to now. the number one priority for me for the Buffalo Bills offseason wasn't acquisition of players. It wasn't who are they going to draft. It was how is Ken Dorsey going to evolve this offense? How is Sean McDermott going to evolve this defense? How is the coaching staff going to change to get this team over the hump? Because I think they've had all the pieces all along. Adding's cool, getting guys, developing guys, all that stuff's cool. All of it matters, but none of it matters unless we see in what we see in the development of the coaching staff. And so it's always been the biggest priority for me this offseason. And even going into OTAs, we're not going to see it necessarily. We might not see it till training camp, but unless those things go in a positive direction, it could be a very familiar year for our Bills fans. So we need to see them take the hump. And that's going to be a really hard one to necessarily pinpoint. I think that's going to be the weird thing for content creators and fans this year is how do we judge early on those changes in the coaching staff and how they're going to play out in December, January, February.
The other thing I wanted to bring up, but again, you got to wait for the pads to come on, man. It's what they're doing with Torrance. Right away, he's going to step in right away. I don't think they're just going to hand him the guard job. They do have Bates, and I know we all see Bates as his super utility guy, and I do think that's how it's going to ultimately play out. But they're not just going to hand it to him. He's going to have to
McGovern and Andrew.
And we saw that last Edwards. Kyrie Elam was a first-round pick and got beat up as a 6th-rounder last year. So you can't assume anything, especially here when OTAs are just going on in May. All right, let's wrap up with our finish the sentence segment. I got 4. Usually I'll have a graphic if you're watching this on the YouTube side, at least anyway. I don't have any graphics this week, so I'm just going to read them off to you. I got 4 of them for you. And again, these are just opportunities, little fun facts to get to know Aaron and myself a little bit more here. So let's start here. A TV show instantly recognizable based on just one quote or catchphrase is blank.
Winter is coming.
That's a good one.
Game of Thrones. My honorable mentions were 2 from The Simpsons. Doe and don't have a cow man was huge back in the 90s.
It was.
And then how you doing? For Friends. Those are ones that just immediately when you had that question, those are all the 3 that came to mind.
Those are all good ones.
How about you?
I feel like I go to the office all the time, but Michael Scott saying that's what she said.
I was going to do it, but it's so obvious.
It is. It is obvious. And then one that just literally popped in my mind just minutes ago, actually, when I looked at the question. I guess you would have had to have watched the Flintstones, but when Fred would always yell, Wilma. Yeah. So right away you would know that was the Flintstones. Mm-hmm. All right, those are good ones. Second one. My favorite summertime drink is blank.
I'm assuming you meant adult beverages here?
Yeah, adult beverages. Well, I guess not automatically, but that was what I was thinking when I
don't drink much anymore. I used to be a big beer guy. I can't do it as much anymore. So I don't drink a ton, not a big liquor person. So my answer was nitro cold brew. I love like a hot afternoon and having just a nice nitro cold brew. But if it's alcohol, if I'm going to do it, it's going to be like a really nice sour beer. Just a big cup of sour beer would be my bag in the summer.
When you do have beer, are you a craft beer type of guy?
Yeah.
Like my man, we're 2 different people here. Like Joe, Buffalo Wins. Mm-hmm. He's a craft buy. Like he's got to go to the breweries and get all the craft beers. That's what you are. I am the opposite. I'm that domestic, give me the cheap ass $4 22-ounce Miller Lite special all the time.
So a little backstory, Pat, that you might not know. For me, I worked before I had kids. I worked at Kegworks over on Military, and I was a homebrew instructor. I was in homebrew clubs. I've brewed a ton of my own beer. I am a certified Cicerone server, although not anymore. It's gone away. But I was training to be a certified beer judge. Very into the beer scene. Love craft beer, making it, trying it, judging it, all that stuff. But years ago, man, my weight went through the roof when I was a beer dude, and because I like the big stouts and all these big beers and stuff, and I had to pull all the way back because I can't just do it a little bit here and there. And so I pulled all the way back. I still love it. I still love the process. I still love all that stuff. I'll still have one once in a while, but domestic beers that throw that
cheap shit. See, I'm a cheap shit guy, man. Give me that.
I know. I get it's not for everybody.
So my answer would be Busch Light, but that's my 12-month a year beer, or Coors Light, or Bud Light. I just like the light, cheap Miller Lite.
What about summer? Do you ever do the Genesee grapefruit, the ruby red grapefruit Nate Geary loves so much?
I have not. You know what?
Try
I
it.
just say this out there because he puts it out there. He's bartending at Fatty Beer Company now,
Yes.
part time anyway.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go out and see him, and I've never had that beer, but I'm gonna go there and meet up with him.
All Saturdays, he's like every time I keep trying to get him to go hit a bucket of balls with me because he said he talks about being such a great golfer, and I'm terrible. But every Saturday he's working, so head down to Fatty's on Saturday.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, I'm not gonna say Busch Light though. I'll get a Corona or Corona Light, I should say, and pop a lime in there. They're in the summer. That's the one time of year like I'm down to drink some Coronas. Anyway, all right, next one, 2 more here. My favorite nighttime snack is blank.
Ice cream.
Yeah.
Pat.
Anything specific though?
Yeah, no, I had preferably with peanut butter and chocolate. And other stuff's cool too, but peanut butter, chocolate together is like death to me. I just love that stuff so much. And ice cream, and here's a thing about me that's a little weird with ice cream. I like to soften it up a little bit. So if it's in the freezer, like I'll hit it in the microwave for like 10 seconds just to soften it up a little bit, get down. But dude, I can eat a whole back in the day, I would get out of work, I'd go to the convenience store, grab a Ben and Jerry's pint and just put that thing down. Like not even, it would just gone.
I'm a eat a Ben and Jerry's in one sitting kind of guy, man. I don't have a couple scoops and put it back in the freezer. If I open it and I take that lid off, it's
especially the ones with like the cores in them. It just makes you want to eat more.
My specifically is ice cream sandwiches, but I can't keep them in the house anymore because I'm trying to intermittent fast now. Like I'm not eating 5 days a week.
Right.
After 8 o'clock, I'm not eating anything. I literally will keep ice cream sandwiches in the freezer. I'll get up at 1, 2, 3, whatever it is in the morning. I get up a couple times a night. I'm a terrible sleeper. I got a baby bladder. Mm-hmm. I literally will get up, go to the bathroom, take an ice cream sandwich, eat it at 2 in the morning.
The basic, like
the regular, old traditional,
the ones you get at school.
Yep. You get a 12-pack at Wegmans for like $3.
Yeah. My kids love them, and so we have them around a bunch. Yeah. And if I'm really struggling with my diet, one thing you'll catch me doing sometimes is taking an ice cream sandwich and slathering a layer of peanut butter across the top and eating it. Pat, don't knock it. It ain't good for you. Your doctor will probably hate you, but it's delicious. Good little snack.
I have no willpower. So I literally, if I'm serious about trying to be on a diet, which I am right now, like I cannot keep pop in the house. I will drink it.
Yeah.
I cannot have ice cream sandwiches in the freezer. I will eat them all. Unfortunately, my son is like a healthy eater and drinker. So it's like, I'm not denying him stuff by not having that in there. So anyway, my answer was ice cream sandwiches. All right, last one. Something you'll never do again in your life is blank.
Dude, I honestly would have to put like if there's things that I've made so many mistakes in my life, like, and I've had some real bad years. And so there's a lot of things, and a lot of them I can't even talk about. You would be demonetized on YouTube, unfortunately. So I'm going to keep it very friendly and polite. And it was, for me, it's hopefully never getting married again. Yeah. I love my wife. She is my absolute best friend. And I hope that's my life partner for life. I don't ever want to do it again, or have any more kids. Those 2 things. I'm all set with any more kids, man.
Good with kids. I'm too old to be having any more kids, so I'm definitely good with kids there. Mine is something simple and light, but you might laugh. I will never go on a Ferris wheel again, ever. I am horrified. I'm scared of heights. Yep. And to me, like I could go on the biggest roller coaster because I know it's going to be over fast and it goes so quick. That doesn't scare me as much. Going on a Ferris wheel and you get to the very top and you're kind of
hanging out.
Scares the shit out of me. I close my eyes. I hold the thing as tight as possible. And now I'm just like, fuck it. I'm never going to do that stupid shit again. I'm horrified of heights. So never, ever, ever going to be. And you'll never see Moran at Darien Lake on a Ferris wheel in your life.
I get.
Real quick though, by the way, I saw this too, and we're getting out of here. Quick little music fun fact. We're both music guys. Let me read this to you. Only 3 albums, and this was fascinating. Only 3 albums in music history have spent their first 11 weeks at the #1 spot on the Billboard 200 album chart. Whitney Houston's Whitney, Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life, and now just this past week, Morgan Wallen's One Thing at a Time. You know, I hear about this guy all the time. I think I might have heard a song of his. Not into him. Don't really know him well. But holy shit, man, this guy's popular, dude. 11 straight weeks at #1. Only the 3rd artist in the history of the Billboard.
You know, it's kind of why I feel so disconnected from anything that is going on in the real world. I've never heard that name until just now.
Are you kidding me?
Not even once.
Like, wow, that's even worse than me, and I'm terrible with knowing new music. I hear his name all the time.
Never heard it. I don't watch TV. Like, I only watch sports. So I wouldn't catch it there. I'm on Twitter, so maybe I thought maybe I catch it there. I don't know. I'm very like, I got some blinders on when it comes to music. I'm in my own Spotify algorithm, and it only kicks it. My Spotify algorithm is not. I'm assuming this is a country guy.
He is a country
guy. I don't know about him. Yeah,
right.
Nah, my Spotify's not going to give me any. I'm not gonna. That's not going to be on my radar at all. And Stevie Wonder, Songs in the Key of Life. I might go listen to that today just because this came up. That's by far the best album on here. What a fantastic album that was.
Yeah, it was. And I've heard of Morgan Wallen. Just there's some new rappers that at least you know of that I guarantee you that I don't. So
sure,
it's just the way it goes. Aaron and I are not the people to talk to when it comes to new music. But
officially, I'm officially my parents now. Back in the day. Yeah.
I've been my parents for years now.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode. Make sure you follow Aaron on Twitter at Aaron Quinn 716. Check out Cover One Buffalo alongside his partner, Greg Thompson. Like I said, a great lineup. You can go to the YouTube channel, get good content almost nightly there now at this point. Thanks, buddy. Always good having you on, man.
Yeah, man. Enjoy the weather today, buddy.